bakers. Today we're baking out of my house because there's our 3-hour release today. I was planning on videotaping this demo at school, but they told us to leave. So here I am doing this demo at my house. So if it looks a little different, that's why. But we are making the recipe for our Bakers Against Racism bake sale. Very excited about that. So I told you it was going to be an Asian Western fusion, and that's exactly what this is going to be. So it's going to be a cookie, which is the Western kind of piece. And then it's the Asian fusion part is going to be the flavors and the filling. So there's going to be a matcha filling, or I'm sorry, a matcha flavor in my cookie, which is like green tea, Japanese green tea. And then the filling is going to be mochi, which is also Japanese. So that's how we kind of get our fusion. So I'm going to start off by making my mochi filling because it's going to need to cool, and it's actually really simple, which is awesome. So in this bowl, I have glutinous rice flour, which isn't particularly easy to find in most grocery stores, but you can get that at an international market, which is where I got this, and some sugar. So I'm just going to whisk this to combine. Just so it's all nice and combined, and then I'm going to add my water to it until all of that's combined. I'm just going to kind of slowly pour it in. Just keep whisking. I want to make sure I don't have any lumps in this mixture. So I want to whisk until it's all dissolved. And then there's 2 ways that we can cook it. So we can steam it, which is what I would have done if we were at school in the steamers that we have at school. But I don't have a steamer here. So I'm actually going to microwave it. So it's going to cook the proteins in the rice flour, and it's going to thicken up. So I'm going to cook it till it's nice and thick in my microwave, and I will show you what that looks like. All right, so it just came out of the microwave, so we can take a look. You see how it's gotten all nice and thickened up, which is perfect. So I'm just going to give it a quick kind of stir just to make sure the heat is distributed evenly. The thing about microwaves is it doesn't really distribute heat. If you ever, microwaved your food at home, you might have kind of noticed that like it's not even. You kind of got to stir it. So I want to do that, and then I want it to cool because I need to get it into little balls. So I need it to cool. That's why I made the mochi first, so I had plenty of time to cool. I'm actually going to get my cookie dough to chill as well, but this is going to need a little bit more time just because it's very, very hot right now. Looks like we're pretty even now. So I'm going to set this aside to chill at room temperature while I make my cookie dough. And then when my cookie dough goes in the refrigerator, I'll also put this in the refrigerator. I don't want to put this in the refrigerator right now because it's really, really hot. If you put things that are really, really hot in the refrigerator, it can kind of mess up the temperature in your refrigerator. Our refrigerators are not designed to cool food down. They're designed to keep food cold. So if you put something screaming hot, it can actually raise the temperature of your refrigerator and make other things in your refrigerator unsafe. So I'm going to let this sit, let it cool down a little bit. So let's go make that cookie dough. Okay, so this cookie is the creaming method, so this should be a good review for us. So in here, I have my solid fats that are at room temperature and my sugars. So I'm going to cream these on kind of a medium speed until they get nice and light and fluffy. So we look for it to get soft, lighter in color, and sticking to the sides of the bowl. So I always want to start on low speed so I know that it's not going to spray back out at me. And again, when you know the creaming method, you know so many different recipes, right? So when we know the creaming method, like it pertains to cookies, look, we've already made chocolate chip cookies, sugar cookies, chocolate crinkle cookies. Now we're making matcha cookies. So you can see that you really know how to make a lot of different things. It's not just the recipe, it's the technique. You know the technique. We're gonna let they go until you get to nice and light and fluffy. All right, so it's got a nice and light color, and it's nice and fluffy and soft and sticking to the sides. So I do want to make sure I scrape because stuff gets stuck at the bottom on the sides. And make sure it's nice and even before I go on to my next step. Mix it again just to make sure now that I've scraped it, it's all nice and mixed together. Okay, so all nice and light and fluffy. So it's time to add our eggs gradually. So because I have multiple eggs in this recipe, or the size batch that I'm making, I can just add 1 egg at a time. I have 3 eggs in this recipe, so I also have the vanilla in there, so it's not just egg. That's why it's dark. And I want to make sure I'm getting it mixed until it's all completely mixed. I don't add my eggs all at once because there's a lot of water in our egg and also our vanilla, and a lot of fat in our butter. And water and fat hate each other. Think about a vinaigrette or a salad dressing where it starts to separate. So it needs to emulsify. Emulsify basically just means 2 things that are different, that don't like each other, to come together. So there's an emulsifier in our egg yolk, and that's called lecithin. But it takes a little bit for that lecithin to work. So if we dumped all of this in at once, it would be a little too overwhelming, and our mixture could split. It would be very difficult, perhaps impossible, for it to come back together. That's why we want to make sure we add it gradually. Same thing, add it until it's completely combined, scrape the bowl, and I'm going to do that one more time with my last egg. Here goes our last egg. Mix it till it's combined, scrape, and then we're on to our final step of the creaming method. Scrape scrape my bowl one last time. And now it's time for our dry ingredients, which I'm going to sift. I don't usually sift for cookies for the creaming method, but I am going to sift today, mostly because of the matcha powder. So I have all my dry ingredients, mise en place here. Container. I'm going to dump it all. But matcha powder can be a little lumpy. And since I mixed it already in with everything, I'm just going to sift it all. But this is not something you have to do. Sometimes you have to kind of use your common sense. And if something looks lumpy, even if the recipe didn't say to sift it, you should sift it. It happened a couple of years ago. We got some flour in that was pretty lumpy. The recipe didn't say to sift it, so I had students that didn't sift flour, and then they had flour lumps. So sometimes you got to use your common sense. Ooh, and this matcha powder is going to make them sneeze. I think. Maybe not. Great. We're all nice and sifted. And with our cookies, with the creaming method, we add all of our dry at once. Being careful to make sure we get it in the bowl. There's lots of different brands of matcha powder. And this one is kind of a more natural one. Like, at least it's more natural in color. So I'm actually going to add a little bit of dye to this as well. But normally I don't mind the color without the dye. But because this is a Halloween bake sale, I kind of want it to be a little bit more vibrant green. I don't want it to feel fake green. But I also don't want it to be like too brown green. So I am going to add a little bit of color. You can get matcha powders that have more kind of vibrant green color, but this one just doesn't. Put that back in the camera. And I can just add my green food color, and this is a gel color, so I don't have to add as much, but it's really, really strong, which is great, so that way I don't get too much liquid in here that kind of throws off my cookies. So I'm going to start by pulsing it just so the flour doesn't go everywhere. I'm going to watch for the color, so it's not quite mixed yet, but I think that I want to add a little bit more color, so I want to do that before I get too far, so I don't want to overmix these. And I'm going to have to mix them a little bit longer just to get the color all the way incorporated. I could have added the color along with the eggs as well to avoid this, but I wasn't really sure how much color I wanted to add. But I think even a little bit more, because it's Halloween and I want it to be nice and green. You can see that this cookie dough is a little soft. Some cookie doughs tend to be a little bit soft. No worries, we're going to chill this and it's going to make it a lot easier to scoop. All right, I'm happy with that green. So I can scrape my bowl. And make sure everything's nice and incorporated. And I think that storm is hitting now. I don't know if you can hear it. Rain is coming down out there. And a couple more quick passes. Great. So I'm going to get this in the refrigerator to chill so it's easier to handle. And my mochi should be cold enough now that it can go in the fridge. So I'm going to let this chill for probably about a half hour or so until it's nice and firm, and then I can start shaping. Okay, so it's been about a half hour. My dough is nice and chilled. You can probably see that I kind of spread the dough up the sides, and I did that on purpose just so I could get kind of more surface area. If I put it all at the bottom, it would take longer for it to chill, so this way it just chills a little bit faster, a little bit more evenly. So now I can start to portion out my dough, and I don't have an ice cream scoop in my house. So I'm just going to portion it by hand. And these are meant to be mini cookies. So I'm going to make really small ones, remembering that I'm still going to have the filling of the mochi. So this is about the size that I'm going to go for. And I'm just going to keep on going until I have portioned out all of this cookie dough. Once it is portioned, I'm going to put it back into my refrigerator because, again, it'll be a little bit easier to handle to fill the cookies with, as long as they're nice and firm. All right, so I'm going to keep on going, trying my best to get them nice and even. Is a little bit more difficult without an ice cream scoop, but I'm just going to do my best. So I've got all my cookies portioned. I actually baked off a couple just to kind of gauge the size. It actually went a little bit smaller. They were really specific on what size they needed to be to fit in the box. So I made these a little bit smaller now. So I've got all of these portions. So these are going to be in the fridge. Meanwhile, I'm going to start to portion out my mochi, which is nice and chilled, so I can handle it. So it's a little sticky, but I want it to be nice and small so that it can fit. So I'm looking for pieces that are about that. If it starts to get too sticky on me, what I can do is just put my hands on a little bit of water. I don't want it to be soaking. That'll just help it so it doesn't stick to my hands too much. So I'm just going to portion out enough of this mochi so I can get my cookies filled. So I'm going to get all this portioned out, and then I'm going to show you how to fill the cookies. Okay, so I've got all my cookie dough here, and I've got my mochi pieces here. So now it's time to bring them all together so this dough is nice and chilled, so it's easier for me to work with. So I'm going to take a piece, and I'm going to flatten it in my hand like that. And then I'm going to take a piece of my mochi. I'm going to put it in the center. And I'm just going to fold my dough up so that I can't see the mochi anymore. And then I'll just take and very gently roll it together. And I'll find my seam, and I want to put that on the bottom so it doesn't bake like that. I'm not going to bake these today, so I'm going to put them really close together so I don't have to waste a lot of space in my refrigerator, or in my freezer rather, because these are going to freeze. I'll stay a little bit fresher frozen. So again, I just make a flat disc, grab a piece of mochi, fold the dough around the mochi, roll it up into a ball, just like that. So I'm going to do these for all this. This is a pretty labor-intensive cookie, but for a good cause, I think it's totally worth it. If you were doing this in the industry, you definitely want to think about this when you think about how much you're going to charge for it. So obviously you need to charge more than a traditional cookie because it's going to take a lot more time. And time is our money. So we definitely would need to charge more. And you can totally make these bigger. So I'm making these small because they want them to be small for the fundraiser for the Bakers Against Racism Halloween bake sale. They want them to be small because it's going to be little mixed boxes of treats. So they want them to be very small so it can fit in the box that they've bought. But you could make these much bigger. Like we could do these with like the scoops that we use at school, those like purple or black scoops, make nice big ones with much bigger pieces of mochi. If I was doing this for retail, I would definitely do them bigger versus smaller because the bigger is going to be a lot less labor. And if you're doing small ones like this, you probably sell like 5 or 6 per bag versus 1 or 2 big ones. But you could probably get for the same price. You might as well do it with less labor. So I'm going to keep going until all of my cookies are filled. And these are, after this, they are ready to bake, but the bake sale is not till tomorrow. So I'm going to bake these tomorrow. Cookies are awesome like that because the dough freezes just incredibly well. So I don't have to bake them today. I can make sure they're nice and fresh for the bake sale. So I'm going to keep going till all these are done, and then we will bake these tomorrow. All right, so this is day 2, and I realized that I didn't record baking, but I spread them out in baking tray, and I bake them. Since they're so small, you can see the size of my hand, that they're really, really small. What I did was I had to bake them a lot less time. You can see how small they are. So these baked for about closer to 8 minutes. So they were already done, all done. So again, I'm looking for just a barely hint of gold on the edge. And so they're still nice and soft on the inside. And if I pull it open, I get a really awesome stretch from my mochi. And that's my Halloween. So it's kind of Halloweeny with the green and the stretchy inside. Yeah, that's my Halloween bake sale Asian fusion treat.